Hey, Adam Johnson, how's it going, mate?
Hello, Stephen Walker. Great to see you.
Tell me some facts about you, if no one knows who you are already.
Well, my name it feels like blind date, by the way. Remember when Cilla Black was like, contestant number one, what's your name, where are you from? I'm Adam Johnson. I'm from Manchester. I was waiting for a cheer. Yeah, from Manchester, born and bred. I'm married and I've got two children, although they're not that young anymore. Fun fact, I mean, my kids are nearly 16 and nearly 13. And when I told that to the videographers on Friday, one of them said that he thought I looked about 30. So that guy is either blind or fancies me, one or the other. But yeah, that's me. And then what other facts? And I'm a wedding photographer. And yeah, what more do you want to know, dude?
Okay, so you're a wedding photographer, but what did you do before you were a wedding photographer?
So I'll rewind massively. So I always wanted to be a lawyer. That was my first goal and dream in life was to be a lawyer. And
how old are you when you wanted to be a lawyer?
Oh, mate, I was the nerdiest teenager ever.
So, right. Gee, I'm glad you said teenager. I thought you were going to say when some kids want to be like an astronaut or make computer games. You were like, yeah, at 4 going, you were the kid on the playground that was telling everyone what the rules were and that they couldn't break them.
Maybe. I mean, the thing was, I didn't want it to be just any lawyer. So back in those days, I don't even remember what year this would have been, but there was an old, overweight American lawyer called Perry Mason on TV. It was like a fictional TV show called Perry Mason. I wanted to be Perry Mason. So that was my goal, was to move to the States, study law, and become Perry Mason. And that didn't happen. So when I left school, when I left college, actually, my dad didn't want me to go to university because he has his own beliefs about, student debt and all the rest of it. So he didn't want me to go to university, and he helped me get my first job. And I just got a job working in a call center. That was my first ever job. Mm-hmm. But I've always been kind of a hard worker, and just always wanted to just please the people I was working for. So I was quite a hard worker, and I would always do what I was told, and I'd always do a good job of it. And I just started getting promoted, and eventually I started being sent on training courses to learn about web programming and building websites and building databases and all that kind of stuff. And all that kind of stuff really appealed to my brain. So I just kind of ended up doing that as a career. So for about 10 years, that's what I did. I was a database programmer, doing a bit of website building, working for big
Sounds
banks.
Like what Chandler Bing might have done.
I was Chandler Bing, and I was very proud to be Chandler Bing, because the depth of my obsession with Friends, and my obsession with Friends was led by my obsession with wanting to be Chandler Bing. So
you'll know all about the weenus and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do the weenus. Honestly, I was a genius of the weenus, and but yeah, no, I was obsessed with being Chandler, and even you wouldn't have liked me back then, because I even tried to like speak like him and tell jokes like him. So yeah, it's strange times. But yeah, that was me. I was a programmer, basically.
Interesting. Okay, so how do you go from doing weekly estimated net usage systems into becoming a wedding photographer? Where's the transition there?
Well, it's weird, really. So even though I had a good career doing that, and I actually enjoyed being a programmer, and I kind of miss being a programmer in a lot of ways. I loved coding, and but I was terrible at having the structure of a job. So I wasn't very good at getting into work on time. I wasn't very good at, once I got kind of good at my jobs, I know I was saying before, I used to be a bit of a people pleaser where my bosses were concerned. I'd do what I was told and do my work really well. I always carried on do my work really well, but then I started answering back, and I was never that good at having a boss because the more skilled I became at programming, I was working for bosses who weren't programmers. So they were just managers. So they didn't understand what I was doing as a job, but were still kind of telling me what to do. And I was never very good at that. So I was always getting a little bit of trouble at work. And then we had a baby. And so my wife was off work for a year, maternity leave with him, and life was great. She was at home and he was at home, and I was coming home and seeing him, and everything was good. And then she had to go back to work full time after that year, and he had to go into full-time nursery. And I couldn't cope with it. I couldn't deal with it. And, I didn't want somebody else looking after him for 50, 60 hours a week and costing us a fortune. And then it had gone from like this kind of idyllic life of, my wife being at home and him being at home and me coming home to like happy, those two really happy, and I'd get some nice time with them at the end of the day, to we were only really seeing him when he was grumpy and tired and obviously at weekends. So I couldn't deal with that. And I don't know how it really happened, but I was dabbling with photography as a hobby at this time. And I remember just having a real hard time with this whole thing of him being at full-time nursery and being stood in the garden with my wife one evening. And I just said, right, that's it. I'm going to be a photographer. And she was like, where's this come from? Like, she knew I was a hobbyist photographer, but that was just something I decided that it must have been that I was just like, I have to escape the 9-to-5 rat race. I need control of my life. I need control of who looks after our child and when and how much we get to see him. What can I possibly do? The only hobby I've got is photography, so I'm going to have to pursue that. And that was my decision. And then that would have been probably mid 2009. And then I had a friend at work who worked with me full time, but he was at the weekends, he shot weddings. Yeah. And he said, do you want to come and shoot a wedding with me? And I went and second shot a wedding for him. And from there, I had enough to build a portfolio. And because I knew how to build websites and all that kind of stuff, I built my own website with that portfolio. Because I'd been working in marketing around that time, I knew how Google Ads worked. So I was able to set up a Google Ads campaign. And it wasn't long after that I was fully booked for my first kind of full-time year. So my first year of shooting weddings was 2010. And I think I shot something like 30 weddings, 25, 30 weddings in that year. Not for very much money each, but my philosophy at that time was get as much work as you possibly can and learn as much as you possibly can, as quick as you possibly can. And then, I don't know if that was the best philosophy at the time, but it turned out okay. Well,
that helped with me because like I had a similar approach when I said, when I said that I wanted to become a photographer, I knew I had to learn as much as I can, as quick as I can. And that's why I invested in the mentoring, which helped catapult my career. But when you were saying before that you were a hobbyist photographer, what cameras were you using when you were a hobbyist photographer?
So the first camera I ever bought, and I bought this for my honeymoon. This was what kind of got me into photography. I bought a Canon 400D to go on honeymoon.
Taormina.
Hey?
Taormina was the honeymoon location.
Taormina, right? Taormina in Sicily, yeah, exactly. So I knew I was going to a lovely place, and I wanted to be. I'd always had cameras, and I always enjoyed taking pictures, but I was never a photographer. I was never into the photography side of it. I just liked to have pictures to show the things I'd been doing.
We'll come on to this later, but your first trip to Taormina as a hobbyist photographer, didn't that eventually help you to get your first destination wedding, or one of your first destination weddings, or in Sicily at least?
No, that was years later, really. I mean, that's a big tangent to go off on. But when I started being a photographer and I'd started learning about SEO, I'd never shot destination weddings, but I built a page because I loved Taormina in Sicily so much. I built a page just about Taormina. Yeah. With some pictures that I don't even know if it had pictures that because the pictures I actually took on my honeymoon were terrible. But I don't think I put any of them on it. But I built a page because I thought,
if I love the place,
I love the place, and I wanted to shoot a wedding there one day. So that page just sat there for years and years, and then eventually I ended up randomly with 2 weddings in the same weekend in Taormina, and but yeah, that's all from taking my camera there on honeymoon.
Which helped me because I think you ended up getting an inquiry for a wedding in Taormina, which you couldn't do, and you referred to me, and I booked it, and then I've done a few weddings in Taormina now.
You've done more than me there.
Yeah, next month.
Yeah, you've done.
But anyway, we'll go back to that camera that you used. You had this Canon camera that you took
400D,
and is that the same camera that you shot your first wedding with this guy with as well?
Same camera I've got now, dude. I've never changed. No, no. So I got my 400D, and actually there was another wedding I shot with the 400D, which was my cousin's wedding. I wasn't his photographer. I was a guest at his wedding, and he had his own photographer. But I thought at that time I thought I was a really kind of creative hobbyist, and I thought I'll go and take some really cool pictures at his wedding, and they were terrible. And it just proved to me that my cameras weren't good enough, my lenses weren't good enough. I didn't understand light. Well, not light, but I just didn't understand anything well enough to shoot a wedding because, people were moving around. The pictures that I took at that wedding, people were blurred. It was massively underexposed or massively overexposed. I wasn't able to deal with the pace of a wedding with the camera settings that were going off in my brain and like how to keep up with that. Because I was obsessed with cameras from the moment I got the 400D, I was obsessed with using the camera in any mode other than auto. Yeah. So obviously, like most people, I ended up in aperture priority because I wanted the background as blurred as possible. Yeah. But then I didn't really understand ISO well enough, so I very rarely went above 400. I was terrified to go above 400. And yeah, the pictures from my cousin's wedding were terrible. So when in between then and then second shooting the wedding, which kind of kickstarted my portfolio, I bought a couple of better lenses. But for the wedding, when I second shot, I hired what I considered to be a professional set of gear. So I hired, I think by then I'd bought myself a 40D body, Canon 40D. But I hired a 70-200 and a 24-70 for that wedding, which I didn't own. But I knew I kind of had the passion at this moment and the drive to turn it into hopefully my career.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'll hire the stuff that I think I would need if this was my job, and that definitely paid off. Having faster lenses was massive for that, because I think the best lens I had even then was a kit lens, an 18-55 kit lens with the the widest aperture was probably f3.5. So. Yeah, but
a lot of gear talk, man. I'm not a gear man. I did ask the question though. I did ask the question about what the gear was. But you were talking about the speed of lenses. Then it made me think that just a few minutes ago you said that you knew that when you wanted to become a wedding photographer full time, that you wanted to learn as much as you can, as quick as you can. In that first learning period, then what was the best thing that you learned, or what was the thing that helped change your business the most?
I don't really have a good answer to that, apart from that. What I'll say is I learned way more. I'd never really been to a wedding up until this point in my life. I think maybe I'd been to one wedding as a guest before I started shooting weddings. So the best thing I learned in that year was about weddings, how weddings run and how they work, and all that kind of stuff.
That's a great answer though, isn't it? Because I think I mean, I don't know if someone wants to be a wedding photographer. One of my recommendations would be just see if you can get invited to as many weddings as you can. Just see how they. But if you've never been to one, how can you? Exactly. It would be beneficial, I guess. But I guess go to as many of them as you can as a photographer with someone else would be a good bit of advice, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, I never second shot. Like, I literally just started second shot that one wedding where I got my portfolio, and that was the only time I ever second shot. So from there, I set my own website up and started offering myself as a photographer by myself. Yeah, and the guy that I second shot for, he actually second shot for me on my first ever wedding as ARJ photography, just for moral support as much as anything else, because I wouldn't say he was massively experienced back then, but he was definitely a better photographer than I was, and he had the experience of weddings, so he helped me massively through that first wedding. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's been a while, but when I've looked back at my weddings from that first year, the first wedding I ever shot was better than the rest of the weddings that year, because I became massively experimental after that. I would try everything I possibly could at every wedding. I wasn't charging much money, so the couples weren't expecting anything stylistically, so I was just free to shoot every wedding however I felt like doing it. So one wedding would be 100% flash, the next wedding would be 100% natural light, and I was just trying stuff. But yeah, by the end of that year, I understood weddings, and that was the biggest learning curve.
So I guess your style and your approach has changed a lot since then. What's it like now?
Well, so from there, a similar story to you, really. So I finished the end of my first year, and I thought, I am all over the place here. I really wanted to go full time. I was still part time, so I still had my full time job, and I really, really wanted to go full time. So I signed up to mentoring early the following year. So I'd signed up to a year-long mentoring program, and from there, I discovered two things. One is that I'm incredibly stubborn and I don't want to be told what to do. So that year-long mentoring program actually lasted 2 months before I quit. I walked away from it because I didn't want to be told to shoot a certain way. And I've told this story a long time in the past, but I remember being described by my mentor at that time as a safe wedding photographer. He said, your work is very safe. Yeah. And he meant it as a huge compliment. And I took it as the biggest insult ever. So I, from that moment on, quit the mentoring and wanted to be as unsafe as possible in my approach to weddings. Because the way he kind of qualified it was that I was a very safe pair of hands, and that brides need a safe pair of hands on brides and grooms, and needs a very safe pair of hands on weddings, and that's what I was. And I was like, oh yeah, but that's just boring.
Yeah, it's going to do an excellent job. It's going to give the couple exactly what they need, but you're never going to create standout photography just giving the couple exactly what they want and need from a safety perspective.
Yeah. But that mentoring that I'd signed up to was very formulaic. It was like, you shoot bride prep like this at this aperture. It was down to that level of detail. It was like we shoot everything at f4, and we shoot this way, and we do this, and we do this, and we do this. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to fit into this box that you're setting up for me. So I did quit, and I went off and thought, I'm just going to have to work it out myself. So style-wise, I didn't really settle into anything for a long time. And it wasn't until I did a workshop in 2012 with a Mexican photographer called Daniel Aguilar, who his whole workshop really was based around light, natural light mainly, and how you see light and how you use light and all this kind of approach where your whole photography style is based around the light. And up until that point, I didn't even realize that was a thing. It never crossed my mind that
now that's all it is, isn't it?
Exactly. So from there, I became deeply obsessed with light and learning how to read it and learning how to use it. That became my style was built around that from there on in, really. And that's the way it's always been. And that's the way I try and keep it being now. There's times when I realize that I've lost sight of that a little bit, and then I try and get back on track. But I would say if anyone asks me about my style, I would say it's light first and then everything else. Yeah,
that's a good answer, especially if a photographer's listening. But would you describe your style that same way to a couple? If they said, "Oh, hey, we just found you online. Just want to know how you describe your style." Would you just go on about the light thing again to them, or would you? A bit more something else?
Maybe I would talk about it in a different way to a couple than I would do to a photographer. But I am an unapologetic nerd about a lot of things, so I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that nerdy passion about photography, about that side of photography to come across to a couple.
Yeah,
and I think they buy into it. And a lot of marketing and these days is about being yourself and being really proud of the way you are.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll speak to a couple and I'll talk about this kind of stuff, and I can see them thinking, "Oh, we don't care. We just think your pictures are really nice."
Yeah.
And that's fine. But for me, my passion in photography is the light, and that it's always going to be, I think, that way. And
so from a personal perspective, then at a wedding, if you're at a wedding tomorrow and it's the middle of the day, you're thinking about the light all the time. Is that what matters to you most personally when you're making your pictures?
Yeah. Even from the moment I arrive at a wedding, that's just mainly what I'm thinking about. I know that the cool thing to say these days is that it's moments above everything else. And that's true in a lot of ways, but, I always say that that's the content. Like we're all shooting moments at weddings. That's what we do. That's 95% of what we do is shooting moments.
Yeah. Well, you can't shoot a moment without light.
No, but you can shoot a moment without thinking about the light. Absolutely.
Yeah, of 100%. Course. But what I'm saying is that even if you're not thinking about it, there's still, if you're shooting a moment now, you might not think about the light, but there's light happening regardless. You can't take a picture without light. So you can shoot the moment first, but you can still make sure that the light's at its absolute best for that moment. Do you know what I mean? You can...
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it goes hand in hand with the way my brain works. I think you either mentioned this earlier or you mentioned it when I was interviewing you, but my brain is logical. It's like, okay, if we get this sorted, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this. And my brain works in a very logical way. So I will, for instance, walk into a room, and the first thing I'll be like is, right, the light is coming from there. It's this color. It's this strong. That's the angle I'm probably going to want to shoot from. All these are the things that start going off in my brain as soon as I walk into a new room. So that's I'll walk into bride prep. That's what I'm thinking. Even though I'll walk into bride prep and I won't just walk in silently and start assessing the light in my head. I'll walk in and I'll be saying hi to people, and I'll be asking the bride or the groom how they feel. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to turn the lights off, and these windows are big, but or the light is cold. Or, you know what? I'll be thinking about all this kind of stuff to do with the light.
It's funny because when you're saying that, I mean, I have the same sort of approach when I think about light, and I think most photographers do. Like, you know, they're always thinking about the light, and it almost comes across like a pretentious cliche kind of thing as an artist to walk into a room and go, you know, you can imagine someone who knows nothing about photography and they're just in like a really nice hotel room, and you walk in and go, right, what's the light like here? What's the sort of temperature of it? What's the angle of it? How soft is it? How hard is it? Like, you can imagine someone just looking at him going, who does he think he is? Some sort of like artist or something? But I guess we all are. And I think when I think about a lot of your work, and this is a compliment, and I'm not pigeonholing you whatsoever, but I think it is a compliment. And I think you're like a photographer's photographer. Like, you know, you say like you're a bit more formulaic in your sort of subconscious approach with your program and your past thing, and a lot, you know, I can see some of your photos have been well thought out and they're stunning. But like, so I think, and I know because I know you, that you've actually shot a lot of photographers' weddings. So I think when a lot of couples look at you, they can see the photographer in you, as opposed to someone like I might book a couple next week, and you could also, who knows absolutely nothing about photography, they just love our pictures. But I think you book a lot of couples that understand it a little bit more, maybe even on a subconscious level. So I think a lot of people, like, you know, when a photographer books you, they'll just go, I just love his use of light, I love his use of composition, whereas, you know, a layman might not understand that. So what do you think matters to your couples when they're booking you? Like, I know a lot of them will understand the light, but what else do you think it is about your work that couples love when it comes down to saying, this is the guy we want for our wedding? Definitely.
I don't really know. I mean, I would say a lot of my couples are also nerds.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of bond with people on that level. And, you know, randomly, I won't always know this, but, you know, maybe the groom or the bride will come to me on the wedding day and say, oh, I do a little bit of photography myself. And I'll hear that. I hear that quite often, where one or the other or both of them is kind of into photography. And I remember shooting a wedding a while ago now in London and finding out on the day that the bride and groom were both photographers. Yeah. And they didn't want to tell me before the wedding because they didn't want me to build that up in my head that they were photographers. But I think that obviously I am into the nerdiness of photography. Yeah. And that goes hand in hand with the fact that I had a nerdy career in programming. And I'm more than happy with that. But the thing with me is, it's like I have those logical steps to go through, but then I do all that so that I can then have a sense of freedom in the way that I actually shoot, because a lot of wedding photography is very quickly working stuff out. We don't have a lot of time at weddings to have, you know, spend ages thinking about stuff. So it's like I want to walk in and instantly be like, okay, these are my decisions. Now I can just shoot, and knowing that the pictures are going to look like mine, and I'm going to be happy with them. And they're going to, you know, have a consistency with my style. Yeah. It's like the old thing of, and I'm sure you do it as well. I'll walk into a prep room. It's only really prep when this happens, but the first thing you want to do is turn the lights off. And everyone in the room is like, do you want the lights on? And I'm like, no, thanks. I want them. I like them off. Yeah. And then someone will put the lights on and I'll go, oh no, can you switch the lights off again? And they go, you want the lights off? And I'm like, yeah, it's going to look better on the, and then sometimes I'll even go, because sometimes the nerdiness comes out of my mouth, is like, yeah, well, what it is the light coming in from the windows is this color, and the light from the light fittings in the room is this color, and I don't really want the two. And then they're like, okay, fine, we'll turn them off. You don't need to tell us all.
Yeah. That same thing happens to me, and they're like, I'll like, you know, nip out and come back in. They go, oh, turn the lights off here. Don't want to be shooting in here, do you? Bloody pitch black. Well, it never gets that dark. But speaking about photography and styles and light, do you have like a photographer, or whose photography work do you like who's not a wedding photographer?
So I reckon my favorite because I love portrait photography.
Yeah, you can see that in your work.
Yeah, and Vincent Peters is probably my favorite portrait photographer. Okay. And I had a couple of his books, and his work is just incredible, and it's all lit the way that I love photos to be lit. Yeah. And yeah, I've always taken a lot of inspiration from more so from the portraits world than weddings. Although I love wedding photography, like it's a big thing for me that I do look at a lot of other people's wedding photography. I love looking at other people's wedding photography.
Oh, not necessarily mine. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
No, you're muted. But I even though, like I was saying earlier, we all shoot moments. That's the content that we're all shooting. And then the box that we put around it is that's what our style is. And I always wanted to be really good at portraits. And, I'm not saying I am really good at portraits, but I put a lot of thought and effort into...
I'll say it for you, mate. You are really good at portraits. They're really nice.
Thank you, mate. Thanks. But I put a lot of thought and time and effort over the years into trying to be good at portraits. And trying to be the best I can be at that, and the best I can be at documentary, and and even details and all that kind of stuff. Because to me, those are the three ingredients of a wedding photographer. Mm-hmm. And then, however much you put into each one of those areas, if over time defines your style really. But I always wanted to be. I always wanted people to see something in my portraits that maybe they wouldn't see, because that's the easiest place to stand out. I think is portraiture, and if someone can see something different in your portraits than other people's portraits, then
I guess it's easy to take an easy, nice portrait, isn't it? Just like a extremely standard but beautiful portrait. It's easy to. I guess
I don't know if it is. I mean, it's hard to know when you've been doing it for quite a while. So for me, obviously, I said earlier, started in 2010. Stuff feels easy now.
I guess this is a really good illustration of that teaching thing before. Is that like, it's easy for me to jump on and go, yeah, it's just easy to make a good portrait. But I suppose there's so much to it, isn't there? Really, much more to it than just
like it's not easy to walk into a room and read the light. It's not. That takes learning about it, and then it's
actually shooting it, isn't it? It's like, all right, looking at it, but sometimes you look at light and then you shoot it and it doesn't quite translate in the camera like you might have envisioned the first time, or. Yeah,
I mean, we're blessed these days with mirrorless cameras that you can read the light with the camera.
Yeah,
but the real skill is teaching yourself to see light that maybe you wouldn't see, like giving yourself a little bit of vision around the light and being like, oh, there's something cool's going on over there with the light. Let's go and work that out. I can't remember what your question was now.
No, I remember when it doesn't matter as long as we're chatting away. But I remember when I was doing those free engagement shoots ages ago that I speak about on my video, and I remember I didn't understand the difference between hard light, backlight. So I didn't understand light at all. And then you taught me hard light, like hard light, and I remember just going off and doing that like a lot, and then. All my images were just hard light all the time, and it's like all I could shoot because I found that I really enjoyed doing it, and I just went down that train. But I was missing out because there's so many other nice versions of it. Yeah. And then I switched to just like soft backlight all the time for so long that when I went back to hard light, I couldn't do it again. And this is me talking as like an experienced photographer. Like me, and I was like, it's so simple, so obvious. Yeah, it gets so complicated to understand. So I guess experience and just shooting it as much as you can is the biggest thing. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's true of anything that you want to get better at, though, isn't it? I mean, I remember doing that workshop with Daniel Aguilar in 2012, and it was in Manchester, and we went out on the streets of Manchester, and we had a model couple, and we went into this, like, while we were walking there, I was like, why is he going down here? I think he's made a mistake. Like, he's going to try and get out this in a minute. And then he took the couple underneath. Yeah, he took the couple underneath like a stair, some metal stairs. I was like, what is he? And then the next thing, this couple were lit perfectly. Where did the light come from? Like, was it the sun, like coming through?
Yeah, it was just the daylight, but because it was coming through these stairs. There was like this perfect shard of light that I couldn't see, that he could see.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, if he can, I mean, I've always had this, I'd say this to my kids, but like if one person can learn to see that way, then I can learn to see that way.
Yeah.
So that was that was all the inspiration I needed.
And now you see that when you're just walking around Manchester with your kids and you're walking past the back of a shop full of dustbins and you'll see just like a strip of light and you'll see it and your kids.
But then over time, the same. Yeah, no, exactly. And over time, the same thing happens like with composition. The more you kind of think about composition, like sometimes I'll be out like for lunch or for having a coffee with my wife. And if I'm like assessing a scene, I tend to close this eye. I don't even know why I do this, but, and she'll say, what have you seen? because I'll just be sitting there having a coffee, and the next thing I've got one closed eye, and she'll know this because I've just seen some composition or I've seen some cool light, and that's just my dead giveaway that I've seen something. But yeah, I mean, once you turn it on, you can't turn that photographer's mind off, I don't think.
No. Get yourself a little tip for you, mate. Get yourself a Sony RX1, and that'll help you with your composition when you carry it everywhere.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, it is important though to have. Joking aside, I mean, the in joke there for everyone is that you recently. I used to have a Sony RX1 that I've regretted selling ever since I sold it, and you've recently bought one, and I'm now jealous of your camera that I used to have. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, other cameras are available. Yeah,
but I take that everywhere with me. Like, and even if I'm just walking the dog for like 15 minutes, I'll take him with me, and I might take a picture, I might not take a picture, but because it's in my hand or around my neck or in my pocket, because it fits in your pocket, like I can't help but think I feel like a photographer, even if it's just in my pocket and I'm just, going to a supermarket. Like I start seeing compositions that I wouldn't normally see, and it just trains me into subconsciously thinking about compositions all the time. It's,
just going like on the nerdy side of things again, so where I probably not long after doing that workshop, I got into film cameras. So I'd never shot film. Well, I had, but it was always just the one you just put it in a point and shoot camera and you send it off to Boots.
Yeah.
But I started shooting film properly in a medium format camera, and I bought a mechanical light meter, a proper old school 1970s light meter. And I used to carry that everywhere. Maybe I didn't always carry a camera everywhere, but I carried the light meter everywhere. And sometimes I would be like, I wonder if I can guess the exposure. So I'd be like, I think the light meter was always set at 400 ISO, or ASA, if you're talking film. And I'd be like, I wonder if I can guess the shutter speed and the aperture where I am right now. So I used to do that. I remember I used to do the school run, and just on the school run, I'd be like, I reckon it's about, f3.5 and a 400th of a second. And I'd get the light meter out and test my ability to read the light, even in that way. So that did a lot, I think, for me. In what I do now, and like I say, now it's different times. We have mirrorless cameras, and you can just dial in some settings and see what it looks like. But you didn't used to be able to do that, so it was really helpful having a bit of a second nature about the light.
Okay, cool. Well, I actually have
say okay, cool, but I know what you're thinking. You're like, you're even nerdy than I thought.
Well, yeah, I didn't know that about the light meter thing, so I'm questioning our friendship. But still, like. Little things like that are cool. Like, do you know what I mean? I mean, carrying my little pocket camera is a bit more fun than a light meter when it comes to trying to become a better photographer whilst not doing photography. But it's a cool little tip. But speaking of tips, I've got a special mystery guest here who has never shot a wedding before, but really wants to get into weddings. No one's here actually, but if there was someone here, and they wanted to get into weddings or they just started out, what advice would you give them to get themselves into becoming an experienced, successful wedding photographer?
It's so tricky these days because the world is so full of advice that it's like there is so much advice.
There's never been more advice.
There's never. We're so spoiled with advice. Even when I started out, there was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was none of that stuff where you could just literally spend all day and learn everything you could possibly ever need to know about cameras, about photography, about weddings. I mean, I guess from my perspective, I've always been quite inspired by my equipment, and I would just say that's okay. The photography community will tell you that's not okay, and that equipment doesn't matter, and it's all just a box with a hole in it, and that just takes pictures, and it's all about other stuff. But for instance, one big kind of light bulb moment for me was the first time I shot with a 35mm prime lens. And up until that point, like the prime lens that everybody had at that time was a 50, and I had a 50, and I just never liked it. Like I would look through it and I didn't like it, and I'd put it on for a bit, maybe at a wedding, and I never kind of got on with it. But as soon as I looked through a 35mm lens, it made sense to my brain. Mm. That field of view made sense to my brain. And then the pictures that I saw made sense to me. Yeah. So that was that was just from me trying different bits of equipment. Obviously now these days, like everyone's got a 35mm, so it's not like a mind blowing weird like left field lens to go out and get. Yeah. But I would say like it's fine to be a bit obsessed with gear and to be a bit of a nerd about that side of it. You can still be I think I'm a really good photographer, despite the fact I have a bit of an obsession with equipment and with the nerdy side of photography and with the technical side of photography. And but equally, it's fine to not, like we talked when you and I talked, you're not bothered about any of that stuff, and you've done really well too. So my biggest tip would be to not listen too much to what other people say, and just kind of trust the things that you like, and just follow them up. And like if you're like, oh, I really like this type of picture, or I really like this way of shooting, or I really like this lens, and then go all in on that for a bit and just see where that takes you. And the second half of that tip is the same tip really, but there's no rush. Like, you don't have to make it within 3 months, or you don't have to make it within a year. You don't have to you don't have to become a big deal within no time. And you'll feel like everybody else is becoming a big deal really quick around you, and they're not. It's just that you're impatient, and that's just the way that the world is these days. So just take your time and just try loads of stuff, and don't listen to other people.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I think you reminded me, slightly different tangent sort of, but I was chatting to a friend of mine. He's not a photographer whatsoever, but he's an old Air Force friend of mine, who was talking about like always, striving to be better all the time and putting pressure on ourselves to be better and be better. And he said, sometimes when you're trying to get somewhere, why don't you just try and, in business or as a creative or whatever, why don't you just try and stop and take a look around, and maybe you're already where you need to be. And I was like, and then he texted me going, I just made that up, I'm quite happy with it. And I was like, mate, that is pretty cool. That, like, I remember when I first started out and I saw someone charge like, X amount of money for a wedding, I thought it was just extortionate, and the dream was to get to that number. And I thought, that's a pipe dream, but to get to half that or 75% of that would be incredible. And I've surpassed that now, but I find myself always trying how to take better pictures, how to book more better weddings, how to make more money. And instead of going, well, you've already surpassed where you thought you wanted to be at one point, man, just to slow down, just, realize how well you've done now, and just, take it one step at a time. So that no rush thing, even though that's great advice for an absolute beginner, critical advice, really, really good. It's good for anyone at any stage of the photography. Like, there's no rush to get to the next level. You're probably in a good place now, and just, just carry on. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. I always remember I always remember, it's a recent analogy you've told me, but you said that, I can't remember how you've said it, but like if you see someone just walking slowly down the street, they've made it. Like, they're not trying to get anywhere. They're just moving.
Yeah.
And that's kind of inspiring on its own level. But yeah, I mean, we're always going to be guilty of it. There's another couple of quotes that are kind of similar to that. One is that, remember when you need to remember when you wished for what you've got now.
Yeah.
And the second one is that, is what you're doing helping you get to where you want to be next? And as long as it is, that's enough.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, isn't it? It's like, what's enough? Even we always want to be better. We always want more. We always want to be the next level up. We always want to book that extra wedding or make that extra money or master that next skill. But, what's enough? Why can't you just be happy? Because otherwise you just keep chasing it until, everyone's there at your funeral going, oh, here lies Ste Walker. Nothing was ever enough.
Imagine. That's profound, isn't it? It's profound.
Sorry to end on me being in a grave. So it's been great chatting about all of the photography thing, your business, how you got started and all that. You're passionate about it all. It's been super interesting. But moving on to FedWed, where this content is, why have you started FedWed? Why not just not do FedWed? Why have you done it?
Good question. No, I mean, it's just you and me the same in this really, is that I get a genuine kick out of helping other people. And I've always had this thing with, if I learn something, then I want to tell somebody else that thing, and help them on their journey to, get where I am and get beyond where I am. Like, I'm not precious about my knowledge, basically. And I remember years ago hearing, there was friends of mine back then, they're a Indonesia-based wedding photography studio called The Uppermost. And I can't remember if it was during a talk they did or a podcast maybe or something, but they said a big philosophy they have over there is that you've only got a finite amount of space in your brain for knowledge. And the only way to make space for new knowledge is to pass on the knowledge that's already up there.
Yeah, that's cool.
So if you pass on something you've made space for and to learn something new. And whereas if you fill up your knowledge space and then decide to keep all that a secret just in case somebody finds out how you do it and maybe they steal your ideas or maybe they copy you, then your space is only ever full with those ideas, and then that becomes stale, and you've not allowed space for new stuff and the evolution of you as an artist. And I always loved that. That really resonated with me. I must have heard that a good 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, I've been teaching workshops and doing what I can on that side of things at an industry level since 2015, 2016. So I'm really passionate about it. And then I think that over that time, the industry's changed a lot. And obviously there's elements of FedWed that we've put into it, which I think reflect some of the stuff we just talked about. So the fact that we're doing it as a non-competitive community is because not everybody wants to compete, and not everybody wants to constantly be, that the whole here lies Stephen Walker, nothing was ever enough. It's okay to just become a wedding photographer, get to a level where you're really happy with what you're creating and you're happy with the amount of money you're making and all that kind of thing, and then exist at that level.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to do something where it wasn't this, hustle mentality driven, overly ambitious, nothing is ever enough vibe, and just give people a nice place to go where they can learn some stuff if they want to learn some stuff, where they can meet some people if they want to meet some people, and people can just enjoy being a wedding photographer, a wedding filmmaker. And I think that's the philosophy of where FedWed's come from, really, is to give people a home where they can just have a really nice time and progress if they want to progress, if that's important to them. And also, from a personal perspective for you and me, we're good mates nowadays. And we met at an in-person conference, and then we worked together. I mentored you for a while, and then we've worked together a lot over the years. And over that time, we've become really good mates, and we play some tennis, and we just hang out as mates. Mm-hmm. So it's a cool thing for you and me to do as well. And I know we said from the beginning, and again, this is kind of topical with what we were just talking about in the impatient side of things, and it's okay if it takes a bit of time. And that you and me have been reminding each other lately that at the very root of this, you and me need to enjoy it. Enjoy the process of building FedWed and seeing what it becomes for the industry and tailoring it to what we might think the industry wants it to be this, but then it might turn out that it needs to be something a bit different, and that's kind of cool as well. So it's just a fun thing to do in a way that we can share our knowledge with as wide a possible audience. For me, that's the driving force.
It's good, man. I love what you were saying before about that the analogy about these Indonesian guys. But have you seen a movie called Pay It Forward?
No.
I was talking to someone today about being kind and helping others, and how you asking other people to pay it forward and just being kind and doing nice things and helping other people. But it was just a recommendation. That was a really nice movie about helping others. It just made me think of it, and I wondered if you'd seen it, but I'd been recommended it, so I'm going to give it a go.
Oh, well, tell me where I can watch it and I'll do the same.
I will do, mate.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it sounds great, man. Me and you share exactly the same thing. It's like taking words out of each other's mouths. We've been working on FedWed for such a long time now. It wouldn't have got to where it's got to today if we didn't share the same sort of ideology behind it. So yeah, thanks for sharing everything, mate. I'm sure people will get a lot of value out of listening to what you've had to say.
Good chats. Thanks, dude.
Speak to you soon, mate.